My name is Ethan Walker, and this happened during my last winter working signal maintenance in Northern California. I've spent most of my career troubleshooting rail systems in places most people never see. Empty sidings, remote crossings, miles of track running through forests and marshland. Railroad equipment is supposed to tell you the truth. That's why what happened at Hartwell still bothers me. I worked 12 years as a rail signal technician before I learned that some trains are easier to detect than to explain. Most of my job was routine. Signal maintenance meant long stretches of empty railroad, equipment inspections, and troubleshooting faults that usually had straightforward causes: a loose connection, water intrusion, corrosion. The railroad was complicated, but it followed rules. At least that was what I believed. The territory assigned to me that winter ran through the Klamath Freight Corridor, a remote section of track used mostly by timber, grain, and container traffic. Passenger service had disappeared years earlier. What remained were signal masts, maintenance roads, isolated sidings, and miles of forest that felt forgotten once the sun went down. At night, even active railroads can seem abandoned. The problem began at milepost 214.7. A dispatcher logged a track occupancy shortly after 2:13 a.m. The system showed something moving eastbound between signal 214 and the old Hartwell siding. There was only one issue. Nothing was supposed to be there. No scheduled train, no maintenance vehicle, no work authority, no reason for that section of track to be occupied. 4 minutes later, the indication cleared on its own. The incident was written up as a possible signal fault and assigned to me. The following morning, I drove out to inspect the location. The access road cut through frozen marshland and thin pine forest. The sky was colorless. The rails stretched ahead in two parallel lines, disappearing into the trees. I spent most of the morning checking every component that could have caused a false occupancy. I found nothing. No damaged wiring, no failed relay, no evidence of moisture or animal intrusion. Everything tested exactly as it should have. That was the first thing that bothered me. Equipment failures usually leave traces behind. This one hadn't. I told dispatch to monitor the block. The next night it happened again. 2:13 a.m., same section of track, same direction, 4 minutes, no train. On the third night, I decided to witness it myself. I parked beside the signal bungalow around 1:40 and waited. The forest was completely still. No wind, no traffic, no distant machinery. Only the occasional click from the cabinet heater behind me. At exactly 2:13, my laptop chimed. The block had gone occupied. The signal ahead dropped from green to red. I stepped out of the truck and scanned the track. Nothing. No headlight, no horn, no vibration. I walked to the rail and rested 2 fingers against the steel. Old railroad workers sometimes do that. A train can often be felt before it can be heard. The rail was motionless. Then dispatch called. Unit at 214.7, confirm visual. No train in sight. There was a pause. System shows movement eastbound through your block. I looked down the line. The next signal changed. Then another farther away. Then another. One after another, the signals dropped in sequence as though something was moving steadily east. The rails remained empty. For a moment, I had the uncomfortable feeling that something had noticed me standing there. Not a person, not an animal. The railroad itself. At 2:17, the occupancy cleared. The signals reset. The forest became silent again. The next day, my supervisor sent another technician with me. His name was Carver. He had been working rail signals longer than I had and rarely wasted words. Together, we verified every component connected to the block. Event logs matched dispatch records. The track circuitry behaved normally. Even when we forced test conditions, the equipment responded exactly as designed. When we finished, Carver stared down the track for a while. Finally, he said, "Maybe we're looking at the wrong railroad." I asked what he meant. He pointed north toward the trees. "There used to be another line through here." That afternoon, I dug through archive maps. He was right. Before the current alignment, a secondary spur had branched away near milepost 214 and curved north toward a mill town called Barlow. The town no longer existed. The track had been removed decades ago, but the old switch location sat almost exactly where the false occupancy began. That discovery might not have meant much by itself. Then the detector spoke. The following night, I was sitting in dispatch when the radio crackled. Detector, milepost 216.3, track 1, no defects. Axle count, 112. Every dispatcher in the room looked up. The detector was reporting a passing train. A detector doesn't guess. It counts wheels. Dispatch immediately checked the lineup. No train had passed. The nearest freight was still stopped more than 20 miles away. The transmission was replayed. Same message, same axle count, 112. That translated to 28 freight cars. An ordinary consist. Somehow, that made it worse. If the detector had reported 10,000 axles, everyone would have assumed the equipment had malfunctioned. Instead, it reported something completely believable. The next night, we installed cameras. One faced west, one faced east. A third was mounted low beside the rail. All three were synchronized to GPS time and powered independently. If something passed through the block, we would see it. At 2:13, the occupancy appeared. At 2:14, the detector reported 112 axles. At 2:17, everything cleared. The footage showed no train, no headlights, no movement, nothing, except for the low camera. At 2:14, frost lifted off the ballast in two narrow lines running beside the rails. The camera shook once, then everything stopped. The surrounding trees never moved. There was no wind, no explanation. Railroads do not like mysteries. They like causes. They like repairs. They like paperwork that can be closed. Officially, the issue remained an intermittent signal fault. Unofficially, people began referring to it as the 213. A few days later, dispatch uncovered something else. An old train symbol. Barlow Turn 18. It had serviced the Barlow Spur before the line was abandoned. Its scheduled departure time had been 2:13 a.m. That was unsettling, but still explainable. Then I found the final operating record. The train had stopped running in 1974 after a washout destroyed part of the spur. The last documented consist contained 28 cars, 112 axles. After that, I stopped sleeping well. I kept trying to build a rational explanation. Buried wiring, legacy infrastructure, signal interference, some forgotten piece of railroad history interacting with modern equipment. The theory worked right up until the 7th night. That was when Carver and I went to Hartwell. The siding sat in the middle of nowhere. Its switch heater had long been disconnected, and the track beyond the turnout vanished into weeds before ending at a rusting bumper. We arrived shortly before midnight and walked the area with flashlights. Near the siding stood an old maintenance phone box mounted to a leaning post. The phone had been out of service for years. Carver opened it out of curiosity. Inside was a cracked handset, dust, and a faded instruction card. Then he went quiet. Someone had written a message on the back of the card in pencil. Do not line Hartwell after 0210. I asked whether it looked recent. He rubbed the writing with his thumb. Not recent. It wasn't an official instruction. It looked more like a warning left by one railroad employee for another. At 2:09, Carver suggested we head back toward the truck. Neither of us mentioned the note again. At 2:13, the block went occupied. Then something happened that should not have been possible. The Hartwell switch changed position. My laptop showed the turnout line toward the abandoned siding. The switch had been locked out. We had verified it ourselves. Yet when we looked toward the turnout, the points had moved. Slowly, silently. The track was lined into a route that had not existed for decades. Carver stared at it. I grabbed the radio. Dispatch, Hartwell switch is reverse. Protect the block. The response came back immediately. Hartwell shows normal. I looked at my laptop. Reverse. I looked at the physical switch. Reverse. Dispatch repeated, we show normal. That was the moment the problem stopped feeling like a signal failure. Two systems were reporting different realities. Then we heard a train horn, far to the west, low, distant, old. Neither of us moved. The horn sounded again, closer this time, but there was still no headlight anywhere on the railroad. The signal mast dropped to red. The detector transmitted over the radio. Detector, milepost 216.3, track 1, no defects, axle count, 112. Then the maintenance phone rang. The dead phone, the one sitting in the weathered box beside the siding. Carver stepped backward so quickly he nearly lost his footing on the ballast. The ringing continued. Sharp, mechanical, patient, 3 times, 4, 5. I wish I could explain why I answered it. Maybe because I was a technician. When equipment activates, your instinct is to investigate it, even when you know you shouldn't. I lifted the cracked handset. At first there was only static, then a voice. Male. Calm. Distant. Barlow turned, holding at Hartwell. Need permission east. I said nothing. The voice repeated itself, exactly the same. Not like a person asking again. More like a recording being replayed, yet it didn't sound recorded. Behind the voice, I could hear faint railroad sounds, metal couplers, air brakes, the low background noise of a freight train sitting idle somewhere in the dark. Carver was staring at me. I slowly placed the handset back into the cradle. The ringing stopped. At 2:17, the occupancy cleared. The switch returned to normal. Dispatch continued insisting the turnout had never moved. The following morning, headquarters became involved. A signal engineer named Varga arrived from the regional office. He reviewed the logs, inspected the equipment, and listened to our reports with visible skepticism. His conclusion was simple: track fault, detector malfunction, display corruption. 3 unrelated problems creating the illusion of one mystery. When Carver mentioned the phone call, Varga didn't even write it down. There is no active phone circuit at Hartwell, he said. That was the end of the official discussion. A week later, headquarters ordered a complete revalidation of the block. We tested cables, replaced modules, verified grounds, surveyed the old Barlow alignment. That was when we found the buried conductor, a forgotten cable running north along the abandoned grade. For the first time, Varga had an explanation he liked. The cable was isolated, cut, removed from service. That night, nothing happened. No occupancy, no detector message, no horn. The railroad behaved normally. Varga filed his report and left. Everyone seemed relieved except Carver. I asked him why. He looked out the truck window for a while before answering. Because we didn't fix anything. What do you mean? We interrupted it. 2 nights later, I got called back out. This time there was an actual emergency. A westbound freight had gone into emergency braking near Hartwell. The crew reported a sudden signal issue followed by an unexpected loss of air pressure. No derailment, no injuries. Just a train stopped across the main line in heavy rain. When I arrived, the locomotive sat beneath a red signal with its ditch lights cutting through the storm. The engineer looked shaken. He kept repeating the same thing. Something crossed in front of us. Lennox asked what he meant. The engineer hesitated. Then he pointed toward the siding. Freight cars. How many? I don't know. Did you see an engine? No. The answer bothered everyone. There were no cars at Hartwell. There hadn't been for years. While the mechanical crew inspected the train, I walked toward the turnout. That was when I noticed the rail. The rust had been scraped away. 2 bright steel lines ran out of the weeds, crossed the switch, and continued toward the edge of the old Barlow grade. Fresh wheel marks, not old scars. Fresh, as if something had rolled across them during the storm. Lennox saw them too. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then dispatch called. Additional occupancy showing in your territory. Lennox grabbed the radio. Negative. We have 1 train on the ground. A pause followed. Then dispatch answered. We show 2. The conductor stepped down from the locomotive. Even through the rain, I could see the confusion on his face. Signals farther east began dropping one after another. The same sequence I had witnessed at milepost 214, except this time there was already a train occupying the main line. Whatever dispatch was tracking wasn't using the rails beneath our feet. It was moving somewhere else, somewhere parallel. The detector activated again. Static swallowed part of the transmission. Then a voice emerged. Track unknown, no defects, axle count, 112. Nobody spoke. The rain suddenly shifted direction. For several seconds, it angled sideways across the track toward the abandoned grade. Not because of wind. The trees elsewhere remained still. Only the trees lining the old spur moved, one after another, in sequence, like something invisible was passing between them, heading north, toward Barlow. There were no lights, no visible train, no sound except a low metallic rushing that seemed to vibrate through my jaw more than my ears. Then the locomotive horn blasted. The engineer spun around. I didn't touch it. Every signal in sight went dark. Not red, not green. Dark. For 3 seconds, the entire corridor vanished into blackness. The forest, the rails, the locomotive, everything. Then power returned, and the maintenance phone started ringing again. Nobody moved. Nobody answered. The ringing continued. 5 times. 6, 7. Then dispatch transmitted something over the radio. To this day, I don't know why. Maybe the dispatcher panicked. Maybe he saw something we never did. Maybe he forgot for a moment that there was no train there. His voice came through clearly. Unknown train. Identify. The storm seemed to quiet around us. Then another voice answered. Not from our crew. Not from dispatch. Not from anyone standing beside me. Barlow turn 18. Delayed at Hartwell. Requesting clearance east. The radio hissed. The voice disappeared. The event ended at exactly 2:17 a.m., just like every previous occurrence. Officially, the incident was blamed on weather interference, signal fluctuations, crew stress, equipment irregularities. Unofficially, nobody wanted to discuss it. The wheel marks disappeared by morning. The photographs I had taken disappeared too. Not deleted, not corrupted. The files still existed. The timestamps were correct, but every image contained nothing except featureless gray haze, as if dense fog had been pressed directly against the camera lens. Carver resigned 2 weeks later. Lennox transferred to another district. I stayed, mostly because I had a mortgage, partly because I kept convincing myself there had to be a rational explanation. There always is. Or at least that's what railroad people tell themselves. 8 months later, I transferred out of the corridor. I have not worked Hartwell since. The Barlow Spur remains absent from every current railroad map. The track is gone. The town is gone. Nothing north of Hartwell officially exists anymore. Last year, a friend still working the territory called me. The railroad had installed a new detector at milepost 216. State-of-the-art equipment, new sensors, new software, no connection to any of the old systems. According to him, it worked perfectly. Except during storms. Only during storms, and only around 2:13 in the morning. Once in a while, it transmitted a message that never appeared in the central archive. No defects. Axle count, 112. Track unknown. He asked if I had ever heard anything like that. I told him no. That was a lie, but not the biggest one. The biggest lie is that I stopped looking into it. Every few months, I still check public railroad tracking systems. I never find a train scheduled through Hartwell at 2:13. I never find a Barlow turn. I never find 28 cars traveling a route that was removed half a century ago. But sometimes, during heavy weather, something strange appears. For only a few seconds, a thin gray branch extends north from the main line. Not on every map, not on every system, just occasionally, as though a railroad that no longer exists is being drawn back into place. At first, the line only extended a few hundred yards beyond Hartwell. Then it reached the old marshes. Months later, it stretched farther north. Last winter, it reached the edge of where Barlow once stood. The maps always correct themselves after a few seconds. The line disappears. The railroad returns to normal. But each time it comes back, it is longer than before. And if that line ever reaches the place where the old town used to be, I think something will finally arrive at the destination it has been trying to reach since 1974. What worries me is that nobody knows what happens after that. Not dispatch, not headquarters, not the railroad, and certainly not me.